So take me from AT&T. Where did you go? How long were you at AT&T? And then what was your journey like from there?
Here you'll laugh, or other people will laugh, but it became about a girl, right?
Always
So
is.
always is, right? So I had met this girl in college, and she lived in a different city than I did in Canada, and her dad owned a company that had offices in Canada and the United States, and I said to her, I said, listen, I can't move. I can't move to your city. I won't have a job, and there are no jobs in your city. And she's like, well, I'm not moving to your city because, you're a workaholic, and I'll see you a week, an hour a week, and that's not going to work for me. And so her dad came in and said, listen, what if I give you an equivalent job in California, and you guys move down? We'll all move down together as a family, and it'll all work out. And I said, okay, fine, whatever, right? Because hey, for the girl.
hmm
And I moved down to California, and I was like, okay, whatever. I mean, I made a deal, but the job equivalent didn't exist. And instead, the job was really son-in-law, wait around, follow him around for 20 years, and then maybe run the company after that. And I said, I'm not built like this. I said, like, this is a bit of bait and switch on me. This is not what I signed up for. Um, and my wife at the time, since now ex-wife, was really supportive. And she's like, okay, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I'm going to, talk to people. And one of my buddies who retired at 30, he said, Steve, you should get into the security business. So I'm like, okay. So 23 years old, opened up my first security company, which I ended up running for 8 years. And that was it. That was more or less, how I got to the States. And that was my first big entrepreneurial venture, a company that lasted for a number of years.
So what was the security company? Because I feel like that's a pretty big jump from what you were doing, and then it sounds like you ran it for 8 successful years. What was that?
It was a security contractor. So, like ADT and those other security companies, right? They do alarms, and some of them do cameras and stuff like that. We did large camera access control type security jobs. So I had a bit of a specialty in prisons, correctional institutions. So I did a lot of jails throughout California, a lot of commercial properties and so forth. So that was my specialty. And it was a huge leap, and I didn't have any idea what I was doing. I was a suburban kid from Toronto, like I'd barely turned a screwdriver in my entire life. I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I can't begin to tell you how under-equipped I was for that role. But my mother had told me something that has stuck with me to this day. She said, necessity is the mother of invention. And I didn't have a choice. I had to make it work. So I had to teach myself in a hurry everything about this. And I paid for all of my mistakes. I had no mentors. I had no help. The family that I was part of at the time actually wanted me to fail because they wanted me to be part of the family business. So I'm battling on all fronts at that point. And it was intense, and it was awesome. And it was a great training for where I'm at today.
I just want to quickly wrap up on this, and then we'll keep going. What do you think your greatest success was? The greatest learning point from that company, and what was probably the most difficult part of that company for you?
Yeah, uh, being a contractor, any type of contractor, I think is like one of the toughest businesses in America today. I think that it's just so difficult. I'm not going to run into it, but I think it's very, very difficult. I have tremendous respect for contractors, whether he's your landscaper, your pool guy, your a residential landscaper, whether he's building a building. It's an incredibly difficult business to be successful at. So I was able to push myself because I was at such a disadvantage. So I was able to kind of really try to exercise some of my potential. I think that was an achievement. I think making the company last for 8 years was an achievement. The biggest thing that I learned from it was, again, the journey to self-discovery. What is really going to make me happy? There was a point when I was 28, 29, running the company 5 years, had figured out the business, figured out how to make money. And, I had luxury cars and was building a custom house in Laguna Beach. You know what I mean? Like I was doing well financially.
Yeah.
And I was bitterly unhappy. bitterly unhappy. Relationship with that wife had just fallen to pieces fairly rapidly. And, the realization of having the strength to leave was very, very difficult. Um, and just understanding throughout that process to listen to myself, listen to my intuition more than following some program or some policy or some societal plan for you is much more important if you're going to find happiness. That was what I learned.
Got it. Thanks for sharing. So how and why did you wind that business down, and then what was next?
Well, I'd taken a large contract through a general contractor, and the end user was California Youth Authority. So, California Youth Authority, there's a lot of prisons in California, a lot of prisons in America, but the prison structure in the United States on the state level, you've got juvenile detention facilities, which are run by the counties. And then if you have like juvenile offenders that have been really, really bad, really, really bad guys, the state has another prison system, which is an intermediate prison system between juvie and adult prison that they call California Youth Authority. And I
Okay.
think it's 10, 11 prisons throughout California, usually old U.S. Army barracks, and from World War I. And this is where folks between 15 and 25 years old will be housed before they transition to adult. And I've been in a lot of prisons, and these were by far the worst prisons in terms of having the worst offenders, just folks that are just broken. A really, really, really difficult situation. Um, anyway, so I took on a job. It was $14 million, big job. And we ran into a technicality. We ran into asbestos. And there's a lot of rules around asbestos. I'm not going to get into it, but the long story short is I didn't get paid what I was due for the asbestos work. And I was strung along. The payment was coming, but it never did come. And as a result, from being on top of the world at 28, 29, 30, 31 years old, bankrupt.
Wow.
Yep.
So what, looking back, obviously hindsight's 2020, what do you think you could have done to prevent that?
It goes to experience. I didn't have the experience or knowledge to properly handle that process. There were rights that I had that I didn't know about. And had I properly known about them and exercised them, I wouldn't have had that problem.
Got it. Okay. So I
But
can see where your deep-rooted respect for contractors comes from now.
yeah, there's a lot of nuances to it. But I will share with you that I'm 31 years old. I've just, given all my team members their final checks and said, hey, the party's over. We're done. I'm sitting there. I'm crushed because so much of my personal identity is wrapped up in that business, which I loved. And I don't know my worth. I don't know how much I'm worth in the market because I never worked in the market before. So I'm like, man, now what do I do? Right? I got bills to pay. So I was pleasantly surprised that I had actually a very high worth in the market, and I got some great offers from it. And then became a bit of a series of saying no to different offers, things that matured into big money things. But hey.
Well, guys, I had a ton of fun learning about who Steve Reinharz is as an entrepreneur, CEO, and founder, and all the lessons that he's learned along the way. I gained a lot of valuable insights, and I'm super grateful that he was able to come onto the podcast. If you have somebody that you would like me to interview, drop their name down in the comments. I'll be sure to reach out to them. I can't promise anything, but what I can promise is that the bigger the podcast gets, the bigger guests we're going to get. So if you haven't yet, consider subscribing. And like always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. If you guys are curious on how I ended up working here for Meet Kevin, consider checking out the courses linked down below. I'll give you guys a super special deal. Go ahead and send me an email, mckay@meetkevin.com. Just mention that you're a podcast listener. I'll get you guys a sweet deal on the new promo that we have going on. So check it out before the promo ends. Again, my email is mckay@meetkevin.com. Send me an email and I'll get you an awesome deal on the courses linked down below. Let's get back to the podcast.